Hey, entrepreneurs, your challenge this week has to do with an abundance mindset, moving away from the scarcity mindset. A lot of you recently have been asking me questions that reflect a mild level of scarcity without really realizing that you've shifted in that direction. So, in my one on one coaching, I often hear a question along the lines of, hey, I'm noticing this sort of mindset block or diminished capacity or interest in my work because I keep doing this upward comparison. In cognitive psychology, we call it an upward comparison when you look at somebody who in some area of life that you care about has achieved more or has something better than you, as opposed to a downward comparison where you compare yourself to people who are worse off than you on some aspect that you care about. And so it's well known from the field of psychology. Plenty of research studies have shown us clearly that, at least in the short term, if you do a downward comparison, you compare yourself to people who are worse off, you generally feel better. For once in a while, we'll meet someone who has a paradoxical effect. They're kind of reverse on that. But for the most part, it causes you to feel better if, for example, you're feeling poor and then you remember that most of the world, the vast majority of the world, lives on $2 a day or less. Suddenly that feeling of poverty goes away and you realize that you're living in a world of abundance, in a world of unlimited opportunities compared to most people. But some of you still do this thing where our tendency is to think, well, it's only the people who I consider like my people that I will compare myself to. So, for example, extremely wealthy people don't compare themselves to middle class, and middle class people don't compare themselves to those who are living on $2 a day. It just feels like, well, that's them. That's not who I am. So it doesn't matter. And entrepreneurs, I've noticed, do the same thing. So I have clients who will say, my buddy just did an exit for $70 million. And I really feel like I'm way behind in this game. I'm just not able to compete with that because I'm only making 10 million a year. And you forget that most people would love to be making 10 million a year. You start doing this upward comparison, and that puts you into a bit of a scarcity mindset. And here's why that matters. Scarcity is not good for your productivity. I'm going to tell you 3 different kinds of scarcity because most people just think of it as all or nothing, and it's just you either have scarcity or you don't. But time scarcity is a real thing. So time scarcity is just one of 3 pieces. I was recently listening in on a webinar with my friend Brie Sodano, and she was talking about this concept of scarcity being money scarcity, time scarcity, and sometimes energy scarcity. And so what does money scarcity look like? You guys all know what that is, but you may not recognize some of the more subtle effects. One of the subtle effects of money scarcity is that you start expending a lot of energy and time to save yourself a very small amount of actual money. And that is a bad move. That is not a far-sighted entrepreneur. Far-sighted entrepreneur doesn't fire their $6 an hour virtual assistant in the Philippines to save money when that means that you're going to have to do 1 or 2 hours of work additional, or go through the process of finding and hiring somebody in the future when things ramp up again. Now let's talk about time scarcity. One of the first things that you'll see with time scarcity is that your planning time just goes out the window. What's the first thing that gets cut when you feel like your day's too full and you can't get everything done? Your planning time. Again, that's not far-sighted. So an abundance mindset tends to make you far-sighted. Having a 25-year time horizon for the goals that you're thinking are important, the things that matter to you, thinking, man, this is whatever I can accomplish in the next 1 year, that's just very small compared to my grand vision for what I can accomplish across 25 years. And so when you take a longer time horizon, you tend to adopt a more abundant mindset automatically. So time scarcity causes us to throw out the most important thing, which is planning. If you gave me 100 things to do and I only had 8 hours to do them, I'm not going to skip planning because that's when it's most important, right? I have to cut out all the stuff that I don't actually have time for so that I can focus on the most critical things that are going to have the biggest impact. Don't cut out planning, please. That's not abundance thinking. That's scarcity mindset. And then there's energy scarcity. That's when you're starting to feel drained and you feel like I just can't commit to something more. I'm feeling like my work, my entrepreneurial ventures are actually beating me up and I just don't have the energy. And here's one of the symptoms I see of that is that you, instead of eat that frog, where you tackle the most difficult thing that you're most likely to procrastinate on the day, you do that first. Instead of that, what you tend to do is you start procrastinating on the things that take higher energy. Here's the paradoxical effect on your productivity, the problem with that. So the reason Eat That Frog works, just as a brief reminder, is because if you have something that you're not looking forward to, let's say you're a landlord and you've got to call a tenant who just hasn't been making rent. You feel badly because they lost their job 6 months ago, but you've got to bring in somebody new that can pay the rent. And you don't want to make the call and tell them, look, you're probably gonna have to move in with your brother because I've got to fill that space. I'm losing money every month. You don't want to do that. And so you put it last. You keep procrastinating on doing that. And actually what happens is everything that was on your to-do list leading up to that, you work more slowly because subconsciously you're slowing yourself down to try to avoid getting to that item on your list. So time scarcity, money scarcity, energy scarcity, watch out for these different varieties. And here's the other thing I want you to keep in mind. Scarcity versus abundance mindset, it's not a bipolar all or nothing scenario. You're often going to find mild levels of scarcity, and that's actually more frequent than extreme scarcity, right? So you're more likely to be at any given time in a mild state of scarcity mindset than you are in a moderate to extreme. And so what that means is that that's where the 80-20 opportunity is for you to level up your game. Go back towards an abundance mindset by learning to recognize these subtle signs of moving into a scarcity mindset. So entrepreneurs, here's your peak productivity challenge for this week. I want you to learn to recognize for yourself, uniquely you, what mild levels of scarcity look like in your actions and in what they sound like in your mind, the thoughts that you think, and even maybe recognize how it feels in your body when you're in that more of a scarcity mindset. Because just learning to recognize that allows you then to shift back towards the abundance type thoughts that you know work, to pull you back into an abundance mindset that causes you to tend to be automatically more farsighted and more productive. Talk to you again soon.